Ladies and gentlemen, let's start this a little differently. I want you to picture this. You're in a roller coaster and it's climbing, slowly ascending into the skies, and as it finally reaches the top, it stops. There's no wind in the air, no thought in your mind, just that feeling. Everything is quiet and you're just waiting for the plunge. Hold on to that feeling. I want you to picture this. Let's imagine a blank page in our hands. Weird contrast, right? To all the students here, I'm not talking about those blank answer sheets. I'm talking about an actual blank piece of paper. An empty space, suspended between an idea and a story that don't yet exist. It is without a doubt in my mind the ultimate expression of uncertainty. That quiet moment on the roller coaster, the terrifying freedom of that blank page, the thrill of the ride, and that seemingly boring concept of nothingness. Those whirlwind of emotions are exactly what I went through in my liminal hour, the most defining chapter of my life so far. Let's go back in time to where it all started. My dream of writing a book started as a single, raw idea, and for months it existed in an intangible space, fueled by belief in my talent and encouragement from others. The blank page was the beginning of my journey, but for me, that beginning was the most terrifying place on earth. I remember at the age of 5 writing up long articles, news reports on aviation incidents, anything my parents told me really. And then the comments started pouring in. At first, it was the distant relative or stranger offering a simple compliment. "Oh, you're such a good writer, Joseph," or "You have a talent, son, don't lose it." But as soon as the fake smile I put up to please them faded away, the pressure bore down on my shoulders. The pressure to fulfill what I felt was a prophecy. The urge to let what others think of my work determine how I feel, how I think. I'd sit down with my pile of paper and just stare. The blank page was like a judge, silent but deadly. Every time that cursor hovered over the white canvas, blinking, insisting I do something, I wasn't just trying to write a sentence. I was trying to prove to the world that I was worthy, that I was a writer. And so in the silence of that room, on that empty page, a battle began to rage. A battle against an invisible audience. I was fighting the mirror my blank page had become. A mirror that reflected all the expectations of what I was supposed to be. In retrospect, the journey of writing my book wasn't just between that raw idea and the finished product. It was a space between my own voice and the voices of what others wanted to hear. Every line I wrote was a tug of war. I tried to craft a character, but the voice in my head would say, "Is this a person someone would want to read about?" I'd sketch out a plot and the voice would chime in. "Is this a story someone would pay for?" I was a creator, but to me, I was also an audience member to my own work. And let me tell you, that audience was unbelievably harsh. It was like I'd gotten on a roller coaster simply to prove to my friends that I wasn't scared. But in the process, I lost track of that electrifying thrill. I lost track of purpose. But anyways, my blank page started to fill. Not with my story though, but with what I thought everyone else wanted. It became a mess of fragmented ideas and borrowed voices. I was wrestling plot lines that tangled in my mind, but they were tangled with expectations, not creativity. Slowly but surely, I started to lose the joy of the craft. I began to despise the blank page I once loved because I saw it not as a space of possibility anymore, but as a space of obligation. I was trying to fill my blank page with ideas that would get a good grade, impress a teacher, land me a future career. I'd stopped thinking about the words themselves, the words that made a blank page a meaningfully full one. I began to question if those blank pages would ever evolve into a story I could call my own. With every question someone asked me about the book, I felt forced to answer with a bigger page number than I told them before. Paint an optimistic picture, make them feel like it was all okay. But I realized none of that made my work any better. all that did was give me that deadly illusion of comfort. But if you're expecting a flip side to the story, I'm sorry to say that that feeling, at least for me, has never fully changed. That constant search for extrinsic motivation. Even as I stand before you delivering this speech today, my first thought writing the script was how the audience would react, not how it felt to me. And while I sincerely hope each and every one of you has a takeaway by the end of this talk, it goes on to show how much all of us rely on external validation to determine our own self-worth. It was in the solace of writing, though, that I finally understood. The war wasn't against an audience. It was against no one but my mind, and my only victory was to surrender to that uncertainty, to let that chaotic experience teach. 86,400. That was roughly the word count of my novel at the end of the journey. 86,400. That is exactly the number of seconds in a day. I like to think that it wasn't a coincidence, but a testament to the fact that every day is a story. A chronicle of every single second, and every one of those seconds has a purpose in the plot of our lives. But to me, of course, most importantly, it was a silent brag to the fact that I actually wrote all those words. This is my takeaway from that blank page. It's not going to write itself, but don't use that as an excuse to let others write it for you either. My novel, Ember and Blitz, to me, is not just a story. It's that impossible dream made possible. It's the tangible 335-page proof that I can fill blank pages on my own terms. At the end of that journey, I realized what changed it all was a shift in my perception. The shift that made me view the conventional not as a mandate, not as something I had to follow, but simply something to keep in mind, something the crowd followed. That shift made me ask questions. Why did I have to inherit a box that's been passed down to me for generations? That same confined space, the pressure to choose, and the obligation to squeeze in. What if we're supposed to do our own thing? Build our own space? Because in the roller coaster of life, aren't we the authors of our own stories? We get to choose what we do with our blank pages, but too often we throw it away and let life take us on a journey we're not ready to embark on. My book has a beginning, a middle, and an end. But my own story is still somewhere in between. Now, the rising conflict or the climax, I don't know yet, but one thing I know for sure is that it's not the end. So I don't have all the answers yet, and maybe neither do you. And that's okay. Because in a world that's always pushing us to move faster, maybe that's the point. Just slowing down and embracing that pause. Those eureka moments of self-discovery, that space between, where the most defining chapters of your story could come into fruition. Ladies and gentlemen, as I prepare to leave this stage, I want to leave you with this. My limited life experiences have taught me one thing. Some people write stories on their blank pages. Others make paper airplanes with them. But whatever you do with yours, do it not for the applause, but for the soul. And the moment you do that, the moment you find your voice in this ever so changing world, I can guarantee you, the world will listen. Thank you.